Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Living Cult Free is a nonprofit that creates spaces where survivors are heard, self-agency is honored, and education strengthens resilience against coercive control. And now, you can listen to Living Cult Free, the podcast, where survivors are given space to tell their stories in their voices and on their terms. Find Living Cult Free, the podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Cult Vault podcast, your dedicated podcast for uncovering the darkest corners of cults and coercive control. I'm your host, Kacey, and I want to start by thanking each and every one of you for tuning in. Your support fuels our deep dives into these critical issues. Before we get started, a word of caution. Today's episode may contain discussions on abuse, including graphic descriptions of abuse and covers a variety of human rights violations that may be triggering for some listeners. Please consider this as a trigger warning and proceed with caution. I'm thrilled to announce that I'll be appearing at CrimeCon UK in London on the 7th and 8th of June 2025 and again in Manchester on the 27th of September 2025. Join me and a host of world-leading experts, advocates and noisemakers at the heart of the true crime community. This is the UK's biggest true crime event, and you won't want to miss it. Use the code CULT, C-U-L-T, for 10% off your tickets. And remember, there are flexible tickets and payment plans available to accommodate everyone. This incredible event is sponsored by True Crime, and it's always my favourite weekend of the year. I hope to see some of you there. And for those who want even more from the Cult Vault podcast, you can access early, ad-free content by supporting me at patreon.com/The Cult Vault, where every pledge not only gives you exclusive access, but also directly supports the continuation of this work. Thank you again for your support and your listenership. Now, let's unlock the vault. Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Cult Vault podcast. Today, we are going to be diving into a subject that I have not discussed on the podcast for a really long time, and I'm looking forward to getting back into it and learning more about this subject than I ever have before. Hello, and welcome to the show, Darren.
Hi, thank you very much.
Darren, you've come to chat with us today about multi-level marketing and specifically Amway. So I am going to ask you to start by introducing yourself to the listeners.
Hi, my name is Darren Mudd, and almost 20 years ago, I was recruited to what I now know to be the cult of Amway, the 5-letter word that most people have heard at least once in their life. Amway means the American way, and it's spread across the globe. It's a MLM, it's a pyramid scheme, and I was in it as a student graduate for a brief amount of time. Thankfully, I got out, and ever since I've been somewhat suspicious of any kind of proposition that includes complicated commission schemes and certainly these power structures, which are very similar to capitalism itself, perhaps a microcosm of capitalism and in the worst ways.
You say that you were coming out of higher education. Do you think this was the vulnerability that was exploited in terms of recruiting you into this system?
Yeah, I'd say so. First of all, people don't join a cult; they are recruited, and that's the first thing to understand. You may say, "Well, I signed up to." No, you didn't sign up to Amway. You were recruited, and usually there is something going on in someone's life at the time. It may be that there's a big change in their life. There's a transition their circumstances are fundamentally changing. Something might have happened. Somebody might have died. There may be a loss in the family. There could be bereavement, heartbreak, disappointment. And so people aren't quite thinking rationally. They become overly emotional. And in that state, they are the perfect candidate for recruitment into a cult. I'd say this. It's not that nobody can be scammed or recruited to a cult. It's just that the script that is being used by the recruiter at any given time might not fit your circumstances right there and then. So it's a bit of a numbers game. So it could be like a very rational person would never get into that stuff normally, but 10 years later, maybe they're in a different headspace and the exact same sales pitch, the same script would fit them perfectly, and that's why they get into it. So when I got into Amway, when I was recruited into Amway, I was finishing university with no clear idea what I was going to do. You know, I'd been a student for 3 years, having a great time, but then there's the world of work looming before you, and I'm thinking, well, what do I do? I mean, like, I don't really know what I want to do. I know I enjoyed doing this, but now I need to find a job. You know, you've got to grow up. As it happens, my parents had separated about a year before. There was a divorce going on. So I knew that the family home wouldn't be the same. You know, they were both living separately. So things had changed fundamentally. Several things were happening. And for whoever gets involved in a cult, I dare say something similar is happening.
So do you think it was maybe... I don't know. I feel like I'm gonna speak for myself when I say that university is like another microcosm where reality outside of university doesn't really exist completely until you have to re-enter it, especially if you're like a full-time student living on campus or living in the area surrounded by other students who are also full-time. So even though there were things happening with my family outside of university, I didn't really think or deal with any of that until after I graduated. So I don't know if that was the same for you, you know, having your parents' divorce and then having university. I mean, there could be a number of different things that the recruiters at Amway exploited during that point in your life.
Yeah, because university is a bubble. In some ways, I mean, it's cult-like in itself. I mean, harmless, but it's, well, cult. The word cult comes from the word culture, or maybe it's the other way around. But, you know, yes, it's a bubble with its own set of rules, and everyone's sort of in the same headspace and the same beliefs and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's a bubble. It's a world unto itself, and you've now been asked to leave that and choose something else. So Amway was like a replacement for that, because as a student, it's very structured. You have, well, within each academic year, you've got 3 semesters, each of which is about 12 weeks. It's a learning program. When Amway came along, it was presented in a very similar way. This is a learning program, and you can make money as well, and it can guarantee your future. It can provide you with an income. And the people who recruited me and some of my fellow students were teachers. One of them was a retired headmaster and his wife was a mathematics teacher. Very nice people, very, very nice, lovely people. They themselves were pawns and puppets and the whole thing. But they were hanging around student campuses trying to recruit young people because they knew they were impressionable and that they had to make some sort of life decision, and they wanted to guide them into Amway.
Wow, that's really tricky. That's so tricky. If you think about Robert Cialdini's psychology of influence, when he talks about people that have people in positions of power. So a teacher instantly is somebody in a position of authority, you know, somebody that knows what they're talking about. They are there as like life mentors that guide you through pivotal points in your life. They are supposed to be people that are trained to, you know, protect you and take care of you. So immediately, like, a teacher has like an elevated status. So if they're telling you that this thing is good for you, you're more likely to believe a teacher than you are to believe maybe one of your peers or like a sibling or somebody, you know. Same thing with like police officers or lawyers or people that have status through, you know, financial status, like richer people. That kind of takes you down the Harvey Weinstein, R. Kelly rabbit hole. But that is so tricky, Darren, having people that are in these elevated positions telling you this is what you should do next.
Power imbalance. Yeah, the power dynamics are not, it's not on equal footing, is it? It's not on equal footing at all. So, yeah, I mean, this tendency to look for a leader. I remember one time when we were having a meeting, so I'd been recruited into Amway, so had one of my housemates, and we were asked to try and find some other students and bring them along to their meeting. And I think we met in one of the buildings on campus. I think it was in the library. The library was huge, but they had like lots of smaller rooms where you could go, like study rooms. And I remember we were sat around this round table, and the guy was there. His name was Richard, dressed very smartly, very charming, very personable, had a very good way with students. And I remember we were sat around the table, and there was another table of people arguing and, well, making a lot of noise. And it was obviously getting louder and louder. And we were sort of looking to him to do something about it. And he did. He turned around and he said, Ladies, do you mind? And they stopped the noise. And I thought, I respected him for doing that because he showed leadership. So there you go. That's an example of a teacher, the power dynamic, the power imbalance. And he, you know, so that was a critical moment, I think. So I trusted him because all my other lecturers and teachers were about to disappear. So I needed a new one.
So when when you talked about kind of university campuses and stuff, I thought that it was going to be a case of being recruited sort of on campus by people that just kind of hang around. You see that in groups like Shinchunji, for example, but this is not. This is internal. This is recruitment happening inside your university. I don't know. How is that legal?
Well, it wasn't necessarily that they were targeting universities, but they were certainly very keen on the idea. What it was, one of my housemates had a cousin who wasn't a student, and she was recruited, but they found out that she had a cousin, my housemate, and said, oh, great, yes, ask her, because they saw it as an inroad into the university. So they weren't hanging around on the street corners of the university. It was more like, oh, great. Oh, we've recruited somebody who has a cousin and she's a student. That's a way into the university. So it wasn't. It certainly wasn't like they were getting in, like, internally, as you say, and they were very keen because they were trying to sell this drink called XS, which was one of the flagship products that Amway was promoting. And it was around the time when there's a lot of like vodka, Red Bull, that kind of thing, energy drinks. So they wanted to have us promote these energy drinks to the local clubs, which we did. We did tasting sessions. We approached local clubs with these drinks with the intention of trying to sell these drinks to the clubs, who would sell them at the bar to students. And then we'd make money through that and generate points, which are redeemable for cash. But at the same time, the idea was we'd try and get other students in on this and say, hey, look, we have this drink. Could you help us to sell it? And that gets them into Amway and obviously all the other cult-like practices like purchasing books and CDs and training materials under the auspices of business support.
So were there any early warning signs for you entering this particular phase of the recruitment process?
Yeah, there were. I mean, I ignored some of those signs because Amway is such a broad proposition to so many different types of people. And a lot of the stuff I found a bit cringeworthy. Like when they showed the plan in our kitchen for the first time, they had a projector shining onto the far wall with the slides from the presentation, and Richard, this ex-head teacher, was going through the whole thing. And a lot of the stuff that he said I found rather cringeworthy, because a lot of it was quasi-religious, like he was trying to cast a wide net and try and sort of get everyone in. But he'd say things like, and if you join us, we can talk about how we can help you achieve your dreams. And I thought, achieve your dreams? I thought, oh, that's a bit cringeworthy. I mean, where's that coming from? I mean, it sounded very off to me. And they were constantly talking about financial freedom, and like whenever they did that, they'd have like a picture, like some stock photography on the slide of like people having a great time, like something out of a Coca-Cola advert, which is almost unreal. It's like it seems so just off. And I thought, that's not for me. But there were certain parts which did appeal to me, about 10% of it. The rest of it, I thought, well, that's not for me. But I didn't realise that all that other stuff were the warning signs. The fact that they were, they had us reading books with titles like The Millionaire Next Door or Prosumer Power, The Parable of the Pipeline, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I mean, they got us on a curriculum very early on to train us to brainwash us already, but I didn't see it that way. To me, it was just more study. And as a student, I'm used to all that. I'm reading books, writing essays. So this was just more of that kind of thing. Bit unusual, but I thought, yeah, that's okay. I'm open-minded. I'm a student. I'll read this stuff. I'll put my ego to one side. But I was effectively letting the fox into the hen house, and it was via education. So a warning sign that I can see now looking back, but at the time I didn't really see it. I chose to ignore certain red flags.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Yeah, I think that's common as well, isn't it? When something feels good, for the most part, the things that maybe don't sit right or don't feel good, I think are easier to push aside when you have the promise of like community and continued education and, help with your finances. Like all of the things you're being promised almost outweigh all of the things that don't quite sound right or don't sit well. And that's the trickiest part, that's the hardest thing to discern,
It seemed almost transactional. There's a lot of sometimes when people said stuff, it seemed insincere. Like there was like a lot of over the top eye contact. Like a lot of handshaking and stuff, and a lot of back patting, and a lot of it just seemed a bit artificial. I remember years later, I watched this, Louis Theroux. You know who Louis Theroux is? American listeners might not be so familiar, but he's a BBC journalist who had this series back in the 90s called Weird Weekends, which were a bit satirical in tone, but later on they became a bit more serious. And I remember one episode was where I think it was called Televangelists or something. He was investigating mega churches and that kind of thing. And also there was this guy by the name of Marshall Silver, who was a very slick, smooth-talking salesman, almost like Saul Goodman from Breaking Bad, but more sinister. And there's one episode where Louis Theroux's meeting this guy and following him around in Las Vegas, where this guy is teaching a mixture of hypnosis and stage guru scam wisdom, I guess, teaching people to be millionaires. So he's on stage with a microphone teaching people how to behave like a millionaire, how to act like a millionaire, how to adopt all the traits and characteristics of a rich, successful person in order to get people to follow you and copy you. And so I was seeing a lot of that. I didn't know it at the time. It wasn't until I saw this Louis Theroux documentary that I thought, oh, that's what I'm in. That's me. And I saw myself as the Louis Theroux character, sort of asking questions which were being defended or battered away or explained away. So it was so transactional, and it was clearly, it became, over time, it became BS to me. But initially, I wasn't seeing that.
When you mentioned that there was like a learning curriculum, how did that process start? Did you have to go to like formal classrooms, or were you just given like homework type things?
It was books. It started with How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, which was written in 1936, so it predates any MLM. That came out during the Depression. And Dale Carnegie, by all accounts, was a bit of a grifter himself. His name wasn't even Carnegie, it was something else. He borrowed Carnegie to try and sound like Andrew Carnegie, who was a steel magnate of the day, rich, famous, influential. This book was released. It was the first book of its kind. Arguably, it kickstarted the entire self-help industry, and it was followed by books like Chicken Soup for the Soul and a lot of other stuff in that sort of genre. So How to Win Friends and Influence People was recommended to us, and I have to say it was good. It was a good book, and I still see good things about it, but it was kind of the gateway to the other stuff. It wasn't woo-woo or esoteric. It was about just being a decent person and not being so egotistical, not gossiping about people behind their back, not saying unpleasant things because it gets back to people, that kind of thing. How to present yourself in sales meetings, how to get people to open up and tell you stuff about themselves. It was that, and I enjoyed that book, and I found it at the time life-changing, actually, because that was the first time I'd read anything that was that positive. And I thought, wow, I'm glad I read that. But I didn't realise that was just a gateway to the hard stuff. That was, that the harder drugs were yet to come. This was like, I don't know, a couple of beers by comparison. But we were going to be soon introduced to this more addicting stuff. So that was how the curriculum started. And from there, it got increasingly esoteric. But that was, over the following, say, 12 months, that all these other books were prescribed, almost like a prescription, like you need to read this. This is what's next for you.
How does it work in terms of you actually becoming involved in like a team or selling products? Do you have to go through a process of reading books and learning how to be deployed, or is it just that happens in conjunction with you selling things and, I don't know, I guess putting some of your own money in to start with?
Yeah, it all happened at the same time, really. We just sort of jumped in with both feet, and before we knew it, we approached clubs and pubs and got some of them to allow us to do a tasting session outside their club or within the club. So as people were coming in on a Friday or Saturday night, we were there like, hi, would you like to taste this drink? And some people would, so that was all happening. There was no sort of formal process. It's a bit like sales in general. I mean, if you wear a smart suit and you don't dribble, then you're a salesperson. As long as you can speak, as long as you can string a sentence together, that's it. Hooray, you're a salesperson now. There's no real sort of process, no real training. So it was kind of all about you just need to believe in yourself. You just need to take the plunge and feel the fear and do it anyway, which is the name of one of the books that was given to me. It's not like an onboarding in a typical organization, which can go on for quite a long time. It was just, oh no, you can do it. Anyone can do it. Anybody can do this business. You don't have to be loud or gregarious or open. You just need to believe in yourself and be open to learning a few tactics. It was that simple, really. Deceptively simple.
Was there an amount that you had to pay into Amway before you could get started with selling your own products?
It was £100 to join for the year. It was £100. That was it. And we had to pay for the books, and we had to pay to go to the seminars. The very early meetings, I think, might have been free, might have been £2 or something. So there wasn't really a lot of outlay. You had to pay something. You had to pay for the books, to the meetings. But to join Amway itself, Amway operated separately to the training organisation. The training organisation was called International Business Systems, which was set up by the leaders who were in Amway, like the high-ranking distributors had set up their own organisation. So it ran in tandem with Amway. So you've got two. So Amway is there to fulfill the product orders and to calculate the amount of points that you earn on your purchases. It tracks who is in your downline, who is in your upline. That's the administration side of it. IBS was there for motivation, That was where they were making the real money, as it turned out later. But initially, it was £100 to join Amway itself, and then it was ongoing fees and expenses with IBS. And some of those fees and expenses started to become quite high, especially when you're attending a major function like the one in Telford, which is not far from where I live. It's not far. It's near Wales, actually. It's in England, and they used to hold this enormous major function there, which was like almost like a rock concert. It was pyrotechnics and music, and I mean, we can talk more about that shortly. I mean, it was quite the spectacle, but it was all brainwashing. That was what it was. It was all brainwashing. In the interests of getting you to believe in yourself and to believe in the leaders.
With the IBS stuff, were you given like a sheet of like seminars or courses that you were expected to attend by a certain date, or could you just ignore the IBS stuff and just stick with the Amway selling products and trying to build a downline?
They did. It wasn't really a structured course the way university would be. Like with university, the modules that you're going to be doing. That there are submission deadlines for essays and that kind of thing. Amway wasn't like that. It was mostly seminar and function based. It was, they'd sometimes have special offers on where it says, if you can recruit 5 people in your downline in this amount of time, that will entitle you for a free trip to the Ritz in London, all expenses paid. So you'll have dinner at the Ritz for the night. All you need to do is recruit 5 people. In order to do that, you have to buy 5 introductory kits, as they called them. So the kits would contain a CD, a book, and some information in like a plastic folder. So if you could buy 5 kits and get those into the hands of 5 people who agreed to go into your downline, that would entitle you to go to the Ritz. So they called it 5 kits for the Ritz. And while we were at this seminar, they played this video on the big screen, like a music video that they'd put together themselves. It was quite quaint, really, amateurish, but, people were sort of hooked, and quite engrossed in this special offer. So they'd do that quite frequently. And they'd also do these short-term I guess you could call it a curriculum, where if you could recruit this many people in this amount of time, that will make you something known as a pace setter. So it was like baubles and meaningless decorations. It's what was it that Napoleon said? He said something like, "By such baubles men are led." So basically, meaningless titles, just titles which seemed fancy and prestigious within the confines of the cult, but to the outside world, pace setter meant nothing. It was nonsense. So who pace setter? You're a pace setter. So you'd get these little badges to wear, like a pin that you get to put on the lapel of your jacket, your suit jacket, because we're expected to dress smartly. All these sort of pointless, meaningless titles, which to your peers meant something, and you could be proud of that. Bit like in Scientology, really. People have these silly titles which, mean everything to those people, but nothing to us. Yeah.
Yeah, and interestingly, just to parallel with Scientology a bit more, the more money you put in, the more money you have to spend to continue climbing that ladder. So you're not only kind of feeling almost like the addiction of the process, you're supposed to feel dependent, you're supposed to feel, almost addicted to the work. You're also then expected to spend more and more money to continue feeling that way, to continue feeling like a success, to continue being given trinkets. And just interestingly, I just looked up there, a night at the Ritz London with dinner can cost anything from £1,290 upwards. So that's the basic dining and dancing package. So let's round that up to $1,300. In American dollars, that's maybe around $1,600, maybe $1,700. So how much do five kits cost at the time you paid for them?
I think they're about, this is back in 2007, so I can't remember what it cost. It might have been like £10 or £15 each. But if I could get 5 people to sign up, then IBS was supposedly going to pay for this Ritz outing. They had deep pockets. Not that we knew any of that. I mean, they said that they were a non-profit organisation, that they were just making money to cover their costs. We didn't know that they were millionaires off the back of it. So, they were making these very attractive propositions to motivate people to get. It was more about getting people into IBS than Amway. I mean, if you're not making money in Amway, it doesn't matter. As long as you're bought into IBS and you're in it for the long haul, there's a lifetime value for each of their customers, if you can call them customers, their members, their cult members. If you get someone into IBS for 20 years and you get them come into every open meeting, every Sunday seminar, every major function, buying every book, CD, and God knows what else, you're draining them with the principle of death by 1,000 cuts over the period of a very long period of time. So they would regularly do these offers, do this and we'll do that for you, or you can come to the Ritz.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
So I know it sounds great, but it's a lot of work to have to go through, and you have to put money in to get an experience out of it. It's like the whole process. Robert Cialdini talks about this as well. It's like when you have a coupon and it says, buy 5 boxes of cereal instead of 3, and you'll get the 5th box for free. And it's like, who needs 5 boxes of cereal in one shop, And so people end up spending more to get the free trinket or the free gift.
Yeah.
And I think the example he uses in the psychology of influence is the first time that a company had said, like, if you buy this like new car or something, if you buy this car, you'll get a free watch. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, a watch. And it looked like a nice watch, but really it was just like a standard, metallic watch. And it was so successful that became a staple. Like, you see that type of thing all over the place now. And that's basically what's being used here, right? If you do this, you get a free trip to the Ritz. It's not really free because you've had to buy 5 kits to get to the Ritz. And also all of the work that goes through recruiting 5 people. When you were involved in this stage of the process, how easy or how difficult was it to just recruit 5 people?
Well, very hard, because I showed the plan to my fellow students. I wasn't showing the plan. I was rounding up people and bringing them to my house to watch the plan as given by my upline, this teacher. And it was really hard to get people. I mean, because it felt creepy and seedy and weird, like you were never allowed to say exactly what it was about, and you couldn't give them details. Like we were coached on exactly what to say, almost with a script, and we weren't really supposed to deviate from that. They were putting words in our mouths and saying, don't say it's Amway because people think that Amway is negative. Say, if you have to say anything, say it's a business opportunity. And if they press you for the name of the company, say it's a Mevo because that's a UK subsidiary of Amway. So there was a lot of smoke and mirrors, a lot of obfuscation of details, just saying enough to tease people and hook them in. Like sort of going, oh, I've got an opportunity for you. Yeah, I think you'd be interested. I'm not going to say too much, but what are you doing on Tuesday? It was like that, and you had to get people to come along, and once they figure it out, it's like, oh,
You're like, oh, I don't know, what am I doing Tuesday? Are we going on an adventure? And you're like, oh, some kind of adventure.
I found it, because I started showing the plan myself eventually, but I found it quite nerve-wracking because I knew I couldn't do it on my own terms. I couldn't use my own style. I had to... I ended up using the same jokes as they did, because I didn't have any of my own. I didn't really, at 21, you didn't really have a lot of life experience, not compared to, what you would have 20 years later. So it was just really hard. And I just thought, I don't want to do this, This is, I don't know. I was staying in it because I liked some of the books and I was getting something out of it. I just wasn't recruiting people or making money.
So after you are kind of pushed through the recruitment process and then you yourself are showcasing the plan and you're actively trying to recruit people yourself, but how do things escalate? If they escalate, do you start to realize that there are some strange things happening, or do you move further down that funnel of sort of isolation and dependency?
I think I did move down the funnel of isolation and dependency, but at the same time, I had like this voice in the back of my head saying, oh, this is so boring. This is just, I don't want to do this. Why? Oh, is it me? Am I the problem? Am I lazy? I knew I wasn't really lazy. I was quite driven and quite, I'm one of those kids that always did his homework just to get it out of the way so I could go and do the stuff I really wanted to do. So probably why they recruited me. They probably saw something in me that they could co-opt and use. But I was moving down this funnel and sort of getting into arguments with people about Amway. I presented the plan to someone I knew, and like she didn't, wasn't keen on it at all and was quite aggressive about it. And, I was going to these major functions and getting all these pep talks and coming home buzzing with excitement, but then that would soon wear off. A bit like getting drunk. It's nice to feel drunk, but you've got to pay for it in the morning and the days thereafter. So it was kind of like I was flip-flopping between two mindsets. On the one hand, yes, I wanted to do it, but I just didn't believe in the business model. I was starting to read things online which were challenging my assumptions. The people who were getting up on stage and, you know, giving these pep talks was a bit cheesy, you know. The phrases like, you know, or everybody else is a dream stealer. If people are saying that Amway can't possibly work, it's just that you're holding up a mirror to them and they're seeing themselves reflected in that mirror and they don't like it, and because of that they want to take you down with them. They'd say things like, most people are like crabs in a barrel, and if you try to crawl out, they'll grab you and pull you back down. They'd be saying things like, if you, one day you will be unemployable, you'll be on stage motivating other people and telling them how you got to where you are. It was, I remember when we went to Telford to the major function, I think it was the second time I'd been, and so like there were like these two diamonds. That was their status, as it was known in Amway, diamonds. They'd reached diamond status. They were making enough money to be financially free. They no longer had a job. They'd quit their job decades ago, and they were now continuing to attend these IBS functions and meetings out of the goodness of their heart to motivate us. They didn't have to. They were doing it because they wanted to. They wanted to help us and pass on their knowledge. And, there'd be the MC on stage who would introduce these two people. Please welcome to the stage, so-and-so and so-and-so. And then there'd be a huge round of applause. And I'm not kidding, the applause went on for about 3 minutes solid, which when you're just applauding like a seal, you know, clapping mindlessly, everyone's clapping. That's quite a long time to be clapping. And I remember it got to the point where I thought, when's the applause going to stop? I didn't stop because other people were still applauding, and nobody else stopped because the person next to them was still applauding. And it was going on for a long time. It felt fantastic, by the way, to be in that sort of environment where everybody is in the same sort of mindset. It feels amazing. I mean, that's what it's like to be part of the commune. That's what it's like to be part of a team, you know, to get out of this individual mindset and into like the team mindset. And we were just clapping and my hands were hurting. I wanted to stop, but I didn't dare stop because nobody else was stopping. And eventually it petered out. But I remember as we were clapping, I remember looking at them on the stage and they looked like they were in absolute bliss. They looked like they must have felt as though they were like the king and queen of the universe or something. I mean, I think back to that now and I think, what would it be like if I was on stage and I had a whole room full of people applauding me, thunderous applause. And throughout that function, like every single beat was an opportunity to manipulate us. Like even the music that they were playing. There was this artist, this electronic music artist from America by the name of BT, Brian something, who had a string of albums. And one of the songs he had was called Dreaming. And I'd been listening to that song only a few months ago, not because it was anything to do with Amway. It was just by sheer coincidence as they were playing the same song. So in between the talks at this major function, which lasted all day, by the way, like 12 hours or something, in between talks, they'd be playing music. And one of the songs was Dreaming. The lyrics go, no words, no talk, we'll go dreaming. No pain, no hurt, we'll go dreaming. Walk with me, the future's at hand. Here with us, here where you stand. We both know the power of pain. We get back up and start it again. With new hope, no place for tears. Leave behind those frozen years. Come with me and we'll go dreaming. So they were playing songs like that. All the theme of all the songs was about achievement goals, you can do it. They played the Rocky soundtrack a lot. A lot of the, I mean, when I think back to that, it's laughable. I remember, right, I recruited my cousin to Amway, right? We went to a meeting and I can't remember where it was. It was quite far out from where we live. We were driven there by our platinum upline, who had been in the business about 15 years, and he was making about 20 grand a year, or so he said. He was a very proud man, very confident, quite short in stature, but big in different ways, and we all respected him. We went to this meeting, and it was like one of his regional seminars held on a Sunday. And there was, whoever the big cheese was in that region was there up on stage. They may have been Emerald, And I remember they were introducing people to the stage who had recently achieved, 3%, 7%, 12%, whatever their levels were, which was quite low level, but still meant something. This old guy was introduced onto the stage. I mean, this guy could barely stand. He had to have people help him get up and go to the stage. But apparently he'd introduced a lot of people and they were all buying the products and it was generating points and he was making money and the money was traveling up the pyramid as it does. And as he was introduced to the stage, they played one of the tunes from Rocky. And it was so funny because I tried to keep a straight face, but I looked at my cousin out of the corner of my eye, and I just saw him face palm and laugh as we watched this old guy being helped onto the stage, who clearly could never go not 1 minute in a boxing match. He must have been about 85, getting onto the stage, and it took quite a long time for him to get on the stage, and all the time there's just like Rocky music playing. It was so satirical. It's the kind of thing that you'd see like in an episode of The Office, It was something like that. And I remember that for me was a turning point because I thought this is just beyond comical. This is actually amateurish. They'd have like these people like working the mixing desk at the back of the room, and like sometimes they'd make mistakes and I'd play the wrong sound. It was like, have you ever seen that Peter Kay thing? It's a sitcom that Peter Kay, it's like a 6-episode sitcom, like an anthology of different stories. And in each of them, he plays a different character in a different situation. I think in one of them, he played like an ice cream man who was warring with another ice cream man. It was, so this Amway, it was almost like an episode of that. You can imagine Peter Kay playing like all the roles. Like he's both the guy on the stage, but he's also like playing the role of the new recruit. And you could, so I think if anyone's ever seen that Peter Kay thing, that's the name of the series, that Peter Kay thing. I think it's from Bolton, I don't know. It was almost like that. So Amway was, it was, they presented it as deadly serious, but I started to see it as absolutely ridiculous. And that's when I thought, I want out of this. I just don't want to be, I don't want people on stage referring to us as road warriors. Oh yeah, show the plan. I know someone who showed the plan 12 times in one night and he didn't get back till 5 a.m. and he was up at 7 to go to his job. He is a road warrior. If he can do it, why can't you do it? You need to quit your job, just over broke job, and go all in on Amway. You don't need a university education. A university education, that's expensive. By comparison, we're offering the real deal. You need us. We can have you making enough money to be financially free in the next 5 years. Why on earth would you spend money at university? All it is debt. You don't need debt. You need money quickly. So they were just ramming this crap down our throats all the time, along with all the silliness and the absurdity of it and the amateurishness. Clapping for 3 to 4 minutes for people on stage who would, it turns out, were just charlatans. So that's when I thought, that's it, I'm done. And I did get my opportunity to get out. That came in 2007.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
– 2007. So that was quite a while ago now. I guess that you've done a lot of work in understanding your experience since then, because of the conversations we had before we hit record. You're clearly knowledgeable about all of this stuff. Outside, you know, how these systems are put together. Just your LinkedIn is so impressive with how you've broken down some of your experiences and what Amway is and how it fits into the kind of MLM world as a whole. I just wanted to ask you if it was the Was it this one from Rocky?
I think it was that one. It might have been that one. They used a few from Rocky. They used a few different ones. Yeah. I think they played all of them without any irony on their part. They were deadly serious about it. I mean, if I did something like that, I would mean it to be satirical. But yeah. I mean, what happened was in 2000, and I didn't know this, but in the background, things were happening. And it was January 2006 that the Secretary of State for the DTI, it was known as the Department of Trade and Industry back then. That was the name of the UK government department, which later became the Department for Business Enterprise and Regulatory Reform. They launched an investigation into the operations of Amway UK, as in, you know, the Amway Corporation, but also into some of these training organizations which existed unofficially side by side. So I was an IBS, so that was the one I was in. But I didn't know this, but there were others around the country, and one of them was called Brit Worldwide, one was called Network 21. There were other Amway distributors in the UK besides those under IBS. So obviously Amway had come to the UK via many means. You know, there was other lines of affiliation, as they're known. I was in the IBS one. And I think, but it all went back to, you know, like the big cheeses in the USA, like back up to the very top of the pyramid, like the actual true top of the pyramid. So I didn't know this, but something was happening in the background. And one day I was told that there was a moratorium on all sponsoring in the UK because of an investigation that was going on into the Amway Corporation and into some of these other organizations. Now, apparently, it wasn't that IBS was being investigated. It was that these other organizations that were similar to IBS were being investigated, and they were doing it all wrong, apparently. They were being misleading and unethical. Not IBS. IBS was clean as a whistle. But the others, they were doing something wrong, and they'd attracted the government, and the government were looking very closely at everybody. And because of that, we had to pause. There was no more sponsoring. So this went on for a few months, you know, like it was like downtime. Everything was on hold, frozen, apparently. So we were told not to sponsor. And I thought, that's fine. I don't want to sponsor anybody anyway. In fact, I was wanting to get out of this. And my upline would call me regularly, my platinum upline. He lived quite close to me. He lived in the city near. And he'd call me up to give me updates, and he'd just drone on and on and on. And I'd think, oh, yeah, oh, okay, yeah, great, right, yeah, right, okay, well, thanks for letting me know. And then hang up the phone, and I'd think, oh, for God's sake, I wish he'd stop calling me. And one day he called me up and he said, Darren, I want you to come to a meeting. This is a really important meeting. It's going to explain everything that's going on. It's really important that you come. I will pick you up. I will take you. it's quite far away, but don't worry, it's fine. So I said, right, okay. So we went to this meeting, and on all the way there in the car, like, he was doing the usual stuff, which is like droning on about Amway and giving me all the usual lessons. I mean, they'd referred to cars as a mobile university. It's a university on wheels. When you travel to and from functions, you should be talking about the business. And if you're not talking about the business, you should be listening to the tapes and the CDs that we've recorded for you. So it was just endless brainwashing, you know. Everything had to be about Amway. So we went to this meeting. We took our seats. There were quite a few people there. And they did all the usual stuff, like, you know, the speakers take turns to go on the stage and talk about the state of the economy and what's going on, and how this business is the future of commerce, and that we see online shopping becoming a huge thing now, what with Amazon and eBay, and it's all moving online, and we should be doing our spending online. And it got to the point where they said, right, and as for the moratorium, well, there's some good news and there's some bad news. The bad news is we've had our contracts terminated. So the diamonds, who had been applauding, clap, 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 clapping like seals, like morons at this Telford function, were now standing there saying, oh yeah, as a part of the government's investigation and the recommendations that the government are making to Amway UK have decided to terminate our contracts to try and send a message to the government. We haven't done anything wrong, but Amway are just overreacting and terminating our contracts. Your contract is still valid, but it's just that we've been terminated. So the business that we've spent the last 25 years building in order to achieve diamond status is no more. It's not our fault. It's just that all these other training organisations have been doing it all wrong. They attracted the attention of the government. The government came down hard on Amway, the corporation, and now Amway, the corporation, have come down hard on us. We're caught in the crossfire. So that's disappointing, because we believed in this business. And do you know what? On second thoughts, Amway wasn't that great. In fact, it was slightly out of date, and really, there are better opportunities that are available. It's a bit like when you realise that you need a car, but the only thing you've got is a horse. And it's even worse when you find out that they've just put the price of hay up. I thought, what the flipping hell are you talking about? What's all this convoluted analogy between cars, horses, and hay? What are you talking about? And it was at that point I was like, you know, people were looking at us, each other, aghast. You know, there was sharp intake of breath. Terminated? What do you mean terminated? So the speakers invited all these other people on stage who we'd never heard of, promoting these weird schemes, which were clearly pyramid schemes designed to replace Amway. One of them was called UVMe, which is like a online gaming thing, but it was all pyramid scheme. Like, you invite somebody and they can invite people and blah, 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 and commissions can be earned. There was another one called Success University, which sounded suspiciously like Trump University, which was a known pyramid scheme run by Donald Trump, which was wound up at some point. That was a property pyramid scheme with multiple layers to it. And they had loads of other people come on stage, and they were basically pitching these weird schemes. And I was just thinking, what? My heart was sinking, but at the same time I thought, well, I don't have to do this anymore. So what they were trying to do was, so these diamonds are trying to get us to quit Amway and move over to this new scheme with the former diamonds at the top of the organisation, and we just all register in the exact same system. So it would be like moving one organisation to another. Do you see what I mean? It was just porting the way the uplines and the downlines were registered into this new organisation. So like we'd sort of put it all together, like, you know, good God.
Sounds like speed dating. It's like, and next up, all that scene in Shrek where Lord Farquaad is having a look at all the princesses that he could send somebody to go and bring to him. They're like, and she likes pina coladas and getting caught in the rain. And then who's next on stage? Oh, it's this Success University.
Yeah, it was.
Wild. It sounds like a fever dream.
It was weird. And when I think about it now, I think, did that really happen? Because it just seems to me like a weird dream I had, or as I said, like a satirical episode of something. I mean, this industry is ripe for satire. It's perfect because I remember on the way out of the seminar, like everybody sort of filed out to the car park in a daze. There were quite a lot of people. I mean, there's over 1,000 people there, which is quite a lot of people when you put them all into one room. It's like an entire school, like in one room. We all filed out. People were kind of like dazed, but the thing was, people were still trying to do the positive talk, like all the stuff that they'd learned. They were still saying all that stuff like on autopilot. Like you've just been told that the world is ending, yet at the same time you're still being very positive about it all. And I remember I think it was my upline I forget which one. One of them turned to me and he said, wow, so how about that? Pretty cool, eh? Some great opportunities there. That gaming one. Now, I know people that love that gaming one. I know a lot of people who play games, and I'm telling you, they will go for this. Yeah, definitely. And I thought, oh, shut the F up, I had to keep it to myself. And we went out, and I got a lift back to where I live with a different upline who actually is an anesthesiologist at my local city hospital. And I always found him a bit odd. He always seemed a bit slippery to me. He had sort of like the doctor's bedside manner thing going all the time. Like he just wouldn't drop it. Very charming and very professional. But I just found him difficult to relate to, and I felt like he wasn't. So I was in the car with him, and we were carpooling. And there were a bunch of people in the back seat who he was dropping off en route. So I was the last person I think I might have been the first to drop off. And we got into the car, and someone in the back seat went, "What the hell are they talking about? We signed up to Amway 4 weeks ago. Now they're telling us we can't do it?" I did not understand any of what they're talking about. And this guy, so I was in the front seat, this guy was the driver, the anesthesiologist. He turned to her and smiled, and he said, "Look, if you don't understand it, it doesn't matter. You don't need to understand it. Because the thing is," and then she went, "Of course you need to understand it. What are you talking about?" And he looked at me like in shock, and I looked at him and sort of shrugged, and he was sort of looking at me to say, help me. So I managed to placate the situation by just saying a load of pre-programmed Amway Ambot crap, which I'd heard a million times. It just came out, like the words came out automatically. You've rehearsed them so many times. And I sort of placated her and got her to calm down and be less emotional. And he looked at me with absolute relief. I've never seen an expression of relief on someone's face like that before. He looked at me like out the corner of his eye and sort of grinned, like as if to say, "Well played." And I thought, I didn't like doing that, but it had to be done just to keep the peace, because it was embarrassing, he's the upline and you've got the downline like going into like full rebellion mode, like mutiny. And we had to sort of maintain the power dynamic, at least for the journey home, because it's an hour. We've got an hour in this awkward atmosphere. And so on the way home, we were just chit-chatting in our usual Ambot pleasantries, just in violent agreement over every little thing. But secretly, I was thinking, I'm getting out of here. This is it. When I get out of this car, they can all F off as far as I'm concerned, because I don't want anything to do with these people. So that was it. That was like a key moment.
Well, I hope the lady in the downline also got out of there as well after having, that kind of realization in the back of the car. Like, what do you mean? What's going on?
Yeah, me too. I hope she came to her senses. I hope so, but some people are very easily manipulated. I mean, I was. She was, she wasn't as far along in the journey as I was. I hope she got out too, yeah. And I hope the doctor learned his lesson as well. Because I'll tell you something, Kacey. I read the report that came out of the DTI. The report was published in 2008. And the recommendations from a High Court judge were that Amway not cease operations, but significantly change the way they operate and the way they make their financial claims. Right? Don't make such bombastic financial claims. Don't refer to people as an IBO, which means independent business owner, but refer to them as an ABO, which means Amway business owner, because you cannot be a business owner in Amway. It's not a business. You're selling products on behalf of a corporation. You are an unpaid consultant on a commission-only basis. You are not a business owner. Amway are the business owner. They control the marketing and the PR. You don't. So the changes were recommended and Amway made those changes, and it changed Amway forever. It was in many ways neutered. It was neutered like a dog. It had its certain parts were removed and it couldn't really do what it was doing prior to that. But I think the cult may have continued. The cult of IBS continued in a different form because they formed a new organisation simply called, wait for it, The Team. The Team. That was it. And they were basically doing the same thing, but with different businesses.
That is such an interesting way to describe it, the kind of the neutered expression. Imagine if all multi-level marketing schemes were not allowed to use the "you're a small business owner" or "you're a successful business owner" kind of hook, and they had to say "you're a successful MLM business owner." It just wouldn't have the same impact, would it? And I know that that's how a lot of people are recruited or seduced or attracted to, or however people want to describe that's process of being pulled into an MLM scheme. One of the biggest attractions is you'll be your own business owner.
You'll be your own boss. Yeah.
That's it. You're a hashtag boss babe. Absolutely.
Exactly. Or you'll be a hunbot or a CEO or a money honey. You can just make these things up, can't you? And a lot of women are targeted because a lot of these MLMs copy Amway, because Amway has set something of a template. Well, Scientology set a template, which I believe Amway may have copied somewhat. And then Amway has set a template and a formula for all the other MLMs which have appeared over the years, with some differences, but generally it's the same bombastic BS. And sadly, a lot of this stuff is aimed at women because women can often find themselves in a vulnerable position. I knew someone in my town, I don't know her well, but she was recruited to an MLM during COVID, and I happen to know by doing a bit of research that she was a single mother with a baby at the time. And she was posting all this stuff to her Facebook. I mean, when I was in Amway, they discouraged social media, but it's all different now. Amway's changed. I mean, Amway has its own business support materials, and you have to pay to be a member of the app and get their officially sanctioned Amway podcasts, So organisations like IBS don't really exist anymore, at least not for Amway, but for these other businesses that are targeting women. I think it's like Beachbody or I forget what they're called, but they're selling
like Mary Kay, Herbalife, those types of ones.
Yes, exactly. So they're targeting women a lot of the time and calling them boss babes and hunbots and things. Well, no, hunbot is a slightly derogatory term that ex-MLMers use to describe someone who's still very much in the cult mindset and hasn't quite come to the senses. But people self-describing as CEO and that kind of thing, which is cringeworthy. And what does that do for women, really? It's a bit. Come on, you can do better than that.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I imagine in some circumstances, if you were using that, like, oh, she's a CEO. If it was like legitimately like you are an independent female business owner who has built a successful business or platform or whatever it is, like it might feel empowering to call yourself a CEO, but it's not, is it? It's under the guise of you're not really a business owner because you're working for your upline. And that's the really sad thing. That's why I think it's good that you had to then say you're an Amway business owner, because it takes that selling point out of, the whole business owner aspect of it. And I think that really lifts the veil quite significantly.
Yeah, it's not a business because they can do a rug pull at any time. Your platform is gone. Just like people who build businesses entirely on social media, let's say, some people do, and then the terms change unilaterally, and then so, oh, right, so you can't do that anymore. So it wasn't really a business because it wasn't stable. It had no sure footing, and you weren't in control ever. You might have felt in control, and it felt empowering, and you were drunk on ideas of financial freedom one day in the future. But no, it's all gone now. So I've learned to be very, very suspicious and to trust my judgment and to beware the friendly stranger,
Well, I think that it's interesting to consider how much multi-level marketing has changed in the digital age, because of course there are different ways for people to sell their products on behalf of the MLM that they are associated with. There are different ways to recruit people. There are different ways to sell the vision, when you say, look at the watch I won, or look at the holiday I've been gifted. And all of these things that are like half-truths, that holiday that you were gifted isn't really a gift because you've had to work so hard and pay so much into getting to that point, kind of like the Ritz example. But even then, I think it's something like, you'll probably know this, like statistics specifically. It's something like if there was like a six person per layer of a pyramid scheme, I think by the 12th layer model, where each person recruits 6 others, it would take approximately 12 layers to exceed the world's population. This means that to even theoretically fill the entire global population, the model would not be sustainable due to the exponential growth in the number of participants required at each level. So in these MLM schemes where you're promised like, oh, you'll just keep going up and up and up and up, that's not true, because you get to a certain point in that pyramid and there's no one left on earth to recruit.
Yeah. But it can never get to that stage anyway, because there's effectively a 100% churn rate, because so many people drop out, they have to be replaced, and new people are being born all the time, and by the time they're 20 or so, they're eligible to be in it. So there's constantly a churn with new blood having to come to the table and put their money into the pot, as it were. Having said that, there's more chance of winning at actual gambling than there is to make money in MLM. You'd be better off literally spinning a roulette wheel, because people lose money hand over fist in MLM. So they'd be better off chancing it in the casino than what is supposed to be a business. Do you know what? There's another book. Speaking of Robert Fitzpatrick, you've reminded me that he recently endorsed a book by one Jane Borden. This was published by Simon and Schuster, I think that's a publishing house. Cults Like Us. So this is the first time a large publishing house, so not a vanity press. A lot of books are published, self-published, on what you call a vanity press, self-published, Amazon, that kind of thing. This is actually being published by a major publisher, Cults Like Us. And it identifies, I'm reading Robert Fitzpatrick's introduction, this is a narrow and deep and personal understanding of the cult phenomenon and how it relates to MLM. It goes into quite a lot of detail, and it says how the media has largely ignored or sidelined the reality of the cult epidemic in America. In particular, Amway, Herbalife, Mary Kay, Avon, and more such schemes involving more than 18 million people in the US each year, which continues to be treated as a legitimate direct selling business. And this false business, he says, its identity is maintained despite the verified fact that 99% of all people in MLM lose their money, and virtually none of the salespeople actually make a profit. So that's Cults Like Us. I learned of this book on David Breer's website. David Breer, I don't know if your listeners know that name. If anyone's familiar with Amway in the UK, they might do. He's a guy whose brother was recruited into Amway, and his brother was completely and utterly brainwashed. By all accounts, he was a rather strange individual, a narcissist and quite unpleasant. He gave away the family inheritance to the leaders of Amway. Well, at least not Amway corporate, but the people running IBS. Yeah, they're like a parasite. These motivational organizational leaders, the IBSs of the Amway world, if they still exist. They took over David Breer's brother's life and had him basically turn the family home into sort of like a headquarters for Amway meetings and stuff like that. So David Breer has a website. It's called MLM, The American Dream Made Nightmare. Breer, it's BREAR. You can find it. It's like the 7th result down or something in Google. He writes in eye-watering detail about Amway. I mean, he's coming for them. It's April 2025. He's been writing about it since 2012, like virtually non-stop, going into such deep. But he's the one who actually got the ball rolling with this 2007 DTI investigation. I mean, in the background, he was lobbying all the time, trying to speak to the movers and shakers of that world, trying to get something, anything to happen. And so when he heard me on another podcast, it was on Life After MLM, he heard it and he contacted me, and we've been talking ever since. But he insists, he's correct in saying that Amway and all its copycat MLMs are cults, and perhaps the most dangerous cult, because it is given the endorsement of the FTC. Back in 1979, they had the chance to rule that Amway and MLM is a pyramid scheme. They chose not to. Jimmy Carter was the sitting president at the time. So what tends to happen is Amway are lobbyists. They're very rich and powerful. I mean, they have deeper pockets than the mafia. I mean, they are more powerful than the mafia and probably willing to do worse than the mafia in many cases. They will often have the ear of the king, as it were. Well, the president. They whisper in the ear of the president, and they will say, let us continue to exist. It's fine. It's good for American commerce. It's a good American business. And so it's allowed to exist. And the FTC had their chance. They didn't take it. Amway was given sort of protection almost. And then it's proliferated from there all over the world. It's now in China. China isn't capitalist, it's communist with Chinese characteristics, but they've adopted a certain amount of capitalism because, well, they've got to. So Amway is now in China. Amway means American way. That's what it means. It's in India as well. It is destroying communities and other continents. It is a dangerous cult. And during Trump's first administration, he made Betsy DeVos education secretary. Betsy DeVos of the DeVos family, as in J. Van Andel and Richard DeVos, the founders of Amway, Dutch immigrants who set up in America and very much made it a family business. So we've now got, I don't know if Betsy DeVos is still in Trump's cabinet. I don't think so. But, we've got 4 years of Trump, so anything could happen.
I believe there's also heavy ties to the Mormon Church and Amway.
Really?
And a lot of people in the Utah area of America are or have been involved in Amway in some capacity. And there are ties to the mafia through the Mormon Church as well. I mean, maybe not the LDS Church, but certainly more along the lines of the LeBaron family and, everything to do with Brigham Young's blood doctrine and all of the controversial events that happened around that particular piece of doctrine. So this is wild, and this has been such an education for me. We've talked about Dale Carnegie's 1936 book. We've talked about Robert Cialdini's Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion book from 1984. We've talked about Ponzinomics by Robert Fitzpatrick, which came out in 2021.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And we've talked about the Cults Like Us new Jane Borden book, which came out this year. So we've talked about so much stuff that can be used as resources for people to go and do additional learning in an academic sense, not in an MLM sense.
Absolutely.
After this podcast, if they want to. And I will put links to your work in the episode description. I'll put a link to Jane Borden's book in the episode description. There's some other things I wanted to maybe I'll put a link to Ponzinomics as well, and David's work as well that you've mentioned.
Absolutely,
sure to
include David's work. Yeah, and there's also, I mean, I think we might have left this out, but if it's not obvious by now, there's a huge tie-in with right-wing Christianity in America, and there are elements of the Southern Baptist prosperity gospel as well, which you see in all these cults. Yeah. Mega churches and things like that.
Well, thank you so much, Darren. This has been an education for me today. I just want to ask you if there's anybody listening who may be part of an MLM, has left an MLM, or gets approached to be recruited into what sounds like potentially an MLM. What sorts of advice would you say to people coming across anything multi-level marketing?
Well, that's a good question. And my initial answer was going to be trust your gut if it doesn't feel right. However, if you're in a position where you're considering joining an MLM, it might be that your gut is untrustworthy. Maybe you're in a particular situation or circumstances. So telling people to trust their gut isn't always the best advice, because they may trust it and make the wrong decision and end up in the MLM. But I'd say ask hard questions and don't be embarrassed to do so. Like, ask to see proof of income, for one thing. That's something that I never asked, but I felt like it was a faux pas to do so. It almost felt like it would be an insult. Like, you wouldn't ask a millionaire if you could see the bank statements, because it would be like ludicrous, so you should ask the tough questions, and don't just go in on these things on blind faith. It's okay to take your time and not to let your emotions override your logic. Most people make decisions based on emotion. I know people say, I make logical decisions. No, you don't. Any decision you make, I mean, whether it's buying toothpaste in the supermarket or buying a house, it's emotional. So be aware of that. You can back it up by logic and reason, but they will try to move you to emotion. And if they're talking about your private life and asking prying questions about your parents and things like that, or siblings or whatever, they might be looking for something that they can use to manipulate you. They're looking for your hot button, as described in a lot of their training literature. You know, I remember reading books about being taught to find someone's hot button, which on reflection is incredibly manipulative. So that's what I'd say. If they're asking very personal questions and trying to find out things about your private life, be wary.
Fantastic. That's great. I've thoroughly enjoyed our chat today. I've learnt loads and you've made me laugh a lot. So even though you're feeling under the weather, Darren, thank you so much for our chat today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Kacey.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No